Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Ian Mann, and joining me today on the panel is Mr. Harvey Diamond and Ms. Lynn Nesbitt. The Assessment Department personnel is Svetlana Shabel, and the administrative personnel is Phoebe Graywood. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have the opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for both items on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decision. You will receive the decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 1 and 2 on our docket today. Ms. Graywood, would you please affirm the assessor and both applicants' testimony?
Graywood, please state your full name.
Svetlana Shabel.
Do you affirm the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, please state your full name.
Ayrton Neufeld.
Do you affirm the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And Mr. Mercury, can you state your full name?
James Mercury.
Do you affirm the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you then, Ms. Shabel. If you can turn to number 1 on our docket today, that's the street address of 200 Woodlawn. If you can please introduce the property and provide your evidence.
Thank you. File number 25-57, roll number 07053333000. It's owned by the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority. We did assess 2025 years with reference date April 1st, 2023 at $1,253,000. It's a school exempt. The subject property, office building, built original 1931 with additional construct in 2005. Suited on plant area 12,466 square feet. Has plan area 3,003 square feet, gross floor area 6,581 square feet, and leasable assessed area 5,915 square feet. On page number 2, we can see that estimated property lease around $13.89 per square foot. It's according to income expense mirror for 2022 provided for us. On page number 3 through 6, location of subject property. So it's located northwest of the city. Air photo view from on page number 3. It's a rectangle shape of land. On page number 4, more air photo view. Street view on page number 5. You can see it's tenants movement disorder cleaning inside. The subject property located zoning, educational, institutional. We assess on page number 7, 5,915 square feet and $13.90. Compared to what reported to us, $13.89. On same page number 7, I presented comparables. All comparables office building located like subject property on Portridge Avenue. My comparables showed old building between 1939 to 1972, 78. Leases started closest lease 2022. On 200 Portage lease was in 2009. Area between 1,000 square feet to 26,000 square feet and showed an average of mean $17.70 and median $16.53. You can look on my comparables. Let's open page 11. My first comparables, two comparables on 1871 Portage Avenue, building built in 1972, one floor building, leases between 2017-19, around over 3,000 square feet at $13.70 per square foot. My comparables on 1833 Portage Avenue, it's page 12, old building, built 1962. It's one street, one story only, for 4.3 thousand square feet, rent at $17 per square foot. Another comparables on page 13 of 1856 Portridge Avenue, building built in 1955, two-story building like subject property, lease for 1,000 square feet and $19.91. My comparables on page 14, 1818 Portridge, built in 1978, one floor building, lease size 2015, around 9,000 square feet at $16.39. Comparables on page 15, 2000 Portridge, old like subject property, 1939, one-story building, old lease size 2009. But I was looking for net rent per square foot from 2022, 26,000 square feet, rent for $15 per square foot. Another comparable on page number 16, 2181 Portage Avenue, old building, 1953, one-story building, lease in 2022, closest to the reference date, for around 2,000 square feet at $13.64. Another comparables on page 17, 2061 Portridge, we have two leases for 1,000, 1,200 at $23.40 or 50 cents. In my last comparables on page 18, 2031 Portridge, building built in 1955, two-story building like subject property, lease closest to reference date 2022 for 3.3 thousand square feet, $16.67. So my comparables showed that average $17.70. If we assess $13.19, it's fair. For we apply, it's give us potential rent. We are back on page number 7, $78,019. We apply 6% vacancy loss for similar for all suburban office building. expenses free, not recoverable 3%, shortfall for for vacant space, $8 per square foot, give us net operating income 68,299. Overall capitalization rate 5.45%, give us estimate value of 1,253,000. On page, we come back on page 19. I look in some permits, size 2004 by 2009 with additional construction was involved 1.3 million. On same page 19 showed construction additional for medical office for one extra 1,477 square feet. In 2005, it was costed, if you see total potential value on same page 19, general information, 1.5 million. On page number 20, another permits for exterior interior alteration in 2004, because its previous was Legion. On page 21, income expense mailer provided for us. It's partial net. It's following by page 22. And we did as in our current assessment 1.253 million. So based on evidence presented in my brief, we are asking to confirm the 2025 assessed value of 1,253,000 school tax exempt. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shable. Thank you, Ms. Shable. I can assume from your attendance, Mr. Mercury, with Mr. Neufeld, that you are here to discuss the issues live or question regarding the issues of classification, liability, taxation with respect to this property, and valuation to be discussed or questioned by Mr. Neufeld. If I've got that wrong, then I apologize, but I'm going to ask you to go first, Mr. Mercury.
Yes, thank you. And I believe I can confirm that value is not going to be disputed here. Mr. Neufeld can correct me if I'm mistaken. So the value is not an issue. This is a supplemental assessment that was issued as a result of a request for change in classification liability. And the only issue before the board, so far as I am concerned, is the nature of the exemption that has been applied on this supplemental, that being the assessor has classified this as school tax exempt only. And as you'll see from my material, this is a premise used for a hospital, particularly the Deer Lodge Hospital, and it should be fully exempt from taxation. So that is the only issue that I'd be speaking about. So I'm happy to ask the assessor a few questions regarding how the supplemental and was the classification in the supplemental assessment was determined, and then I can proceed with my presentation if that's satisfactory to the board.
Certainly, proceed with your questions. Then we'll see if Mr. Neufeld has any questions on that topic as well. Then we'll proceed through the questions that the board may have, and then your presentation will be well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Scheibel, you've had an opportunity to review presumably the material that we have filed on behalf of the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell us how it is that the assessment department determined that the exemption would be restricted to a school tax exemption only and not a hospital exemption?
It's according to Municipal Assessment Act, Section 23(1)(e).
Okay. And Section 23(1)(e) indicates that, yes, property that is used for the assistance of sick persons is subject to a school tax exemption, and nobody would dispute that this premise is used to assist sick persons, particularly those with movement disorders. But you will be aware from reviewing the material that this there are insured hospital services being provided in this building, which is adjacent to it's on the Deer Lodge Hospital campus? Are you aware of that?
But our position still a school tax exempt because it's consistent with how we have treats assessed center owned by Winnipeg Regional Health Authority.
Are you talking about access centers in the city of Winnipeg?
Yes, it's owned
Okay.
by the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority. We consistent with only school tax exempt.
Okay. And did you ask yourself whether there's any differences between the access centers in the city of Winnipeg and this particular clinic that is on the Deer Lodge Hospital campus?
This building
I'm sorry?
this building only tax exempt because it's building on its own role.
Yes.
The building is not conjoined to the hospital as one economic unit. The activities are not deeply assigned in conjunction with hospital or integral to the operation of the hospital.
All right. And why do you say that? Have you had an opportunity to review the material that this is actually, you need to be, are you aware that you need to be referred by a neurologist and that there are nurses and doctors who are working for the Deer Lodge Hospital who are providing services at this building? You're suggesting that they're not connected?
It's not connected because it's a clinic for business. It's not hospital.
For business. You're suggesting this is a for-profit entity?
Yes, because it's referral from the doctor.
Where is your evidence that there's a for-profit element to this clinic?
It's not up me to defend class liability.
Okay.
It's floor for you, please.
Yeah, well, you've made the comment that this is a for-profit clinic. I'd like to understand the basis for that suggestion.
It's a medical clinic. It's not hospital. And we treat it like access center owned by Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, to be consistent.
All right, I understand your position, and I think we'll proceed with my presentation, subject to any, of course, questions the board may have.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, did you have any questions of Ms. Schabel? Mr. Neufeld, you're...
Sorry, I just had to minimize looking for my mute button there.
Okay.
I think we want to keep the focus to the exemption status.
Okay.
I would normally ask a few questions, but I think considering the argument that the value essentially is moot, so I'm gonna leave it to Jamie.
Thank you very much. Mr. Diamond, have you any questions regarding this these issues of Ms. Schabel?
I don't, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt?
I have questions, but I think they're more questions for Mr. Mercury, so I'm going to hold off right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schabel, have you had an opportunity to inspect the subject property at 200 Woodlawn Street?
Only outside. I didn't go inside.
Okay,
It's
so
your building when you can referral from doctor to go in only. It's not public.
okay, thank you. I don't have anything further right now. Mr. Mercury, your presentation, please.
Yes, thank you. I assume you all have the, there's a book of documents that we have provided, so I'll walk you through that.
With 10 tabs, that's the one?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so the property at issue is 200 Woodlawn, and you're familiar with the layout from the assessor's brief, although we also have some, I believe we have some aerial photographs as well of the, if you just skip to tab 6, just to, sorry, it's a little out of order, but it's at page 31 of 52 of the brief. And you can see this, just the aerial shot, and I expect you'll all be familiar with the Deer Lodge Hospital and where it is situated. So you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, that's the subject property, 200 Woodlawn. and it's immediately adjacent and part of the overall Deer Lodge campus. And of course, the next page, page 32, is just the, it is on a separate roll. That's just a matter of, frankly, administrative step by the assessment department has chosen to assess this property separately, but it's nonetheless on the roll, on the campus of Deer Lodge Hospital. So that's just the layout. If we now go to the details, so if you go back to tab 1, which is starting at page 4, and these are just some details about the movement disorder clinic, and that is the building at 200 Woodlawn. And you'll note that this information comes directly from the Deer Lodge Hospital website. And so you can see the upper right-hand corner, clinics at DLC, that's Deer Lodge Center. So what services are provided? You can see it's an interdisciplinary clinic providing specialized services for clients with movement disorders. To be seen there, you need to be referred to one of the MDC neurologists. You can see the various movement disorders that the clinic, the treatment for which the clinic provides: Parkinson's disease, Parkinsonism, tremor, dystonia, and I won't go on to list them all, but there are several. To be seen at this clinic, you have to be referred by the provider to see a neurologist at MDC for assessment of treatment or treatment related to the movement disorders. I'm not going to read all of the information here, but there's a variety of services that are provided at this clinic. You can see their injections. There's a clinic resource nurse that is provided. Contrary to what the assessor suggested, this is not a private clinic. This is all funded by taxpayers of Manitoba. Various therapies are provided. Affiliated services, including Huntington Social Work Services, a very small office in the building for the Huntington Society. There's also, looks like there's some clinical research trials that are carried on through this clinic. And then moving to page 6, again, this is talking about the referral process and how one is seen at the clinic. Page 7, again, more information about the clinic, the mission, maintenance of competence through CME for all staff. There's some teaching, some education, clinical research, and so forth. Page 8, a little bit of the history of the clinic. You can see that the disorder clinic operates out of a designated heritage building on the southeast corner of Deer Lodge Center grounds. 3 paragraphs down, just the origin of the clinic. It's the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, the Deer Lodge Foundation, and the federal and provincial government really spearheaded this clinic. Initially, to fund the renovation of the Women's Tribute Memorial Lodge building, so it would ultimately become the new Movement Disorder Clinic. It opened in 2006 and has been providing specialized services since that time. The team members, you can see all of the physicians, the neurologists, I should say, who work out of that clinic. They also have a manager of patient care, nurses, a dietitian, a social worker, occupational and physiotherapist, as well as a speech-language pathologist. So that brings us to the legislation in terms of why this facility qualifies for a hospital exemption. This is the Municipal Assessment Act, the definitions. If you look at page 12, the definition of hospital, it means a building that is owned and operated by a nonprofit corporation in which hospital services, as defined in the Health Services Insurance Act, are provided to persons who are ill or injured, and includes the offices and facilities of municipal or provincial government or social service programs where the offices or facilities are situated in the building, or such other buildings or parts of a building as are necessary and usual to the operation of a hospital. So this is a fairly broad definition. It's not only the treatment rooms in the main hospital building, but there are often ancillary buildings associated with hospital that can include ambulance garages, include maintenance sheds, parkade structures, and certainly specialized clinics that are earmarked for the treatment of patients with certain disorders. So that's the hospital definition. Then the particular section that is relevant is at page 1522 sub 1. Real property is exempt from taxation. Where the real property is, and then you go down to E, used for a hospital. And again, we've provided excerpts of the Health Services Insurance Act at starting at page 19. That's tab 3. And here, hospital means a hospital in Manitoba that is designated as a hospital by regulation. The Deer Lodge Hospital certainly is designated as a hospital. I can take you to that regulation. Hospital services means the services which an insured person is entitled to receive in hospitals without payment, as described in section 46. Then we move down. Section 46 provides, this is at page 21, services that an insured person is entitled to receive at any hospital, surgical facility, or personal care home without payment. And they are inpatient and outpatient services in a hospital and outpatient services in a surgical facility. Then we go to tab 4. This is the hospital designation regulation. Here we have if you skip down to Winnipeg region, which is at page 25, you'll see Deer Lodge Center is a designated hospital. All of the information that you see on the movement disorder clinic is on the web page of Deer Lodge Center. It is considered part of the Deer Lodge Center in every shape and form. Tab 5 is the hospital services, insurance, and administration regulation. And this is a description of what inpatient services include. And you can see page 27, include necessary nursing services. Number 2, I'm not going to read through all of these. Laboratory, radiological, and other diagnostic procedures, together with necessary interpretations and so forth. And the list goes on. It also includes at number 8 and 9, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy facilities where available, and services provided by persons who receive remuneration from those services from the hospital. And then if we move down, I'm going to, you've seen tab 6, that's the excerpts, the aerial map. Tab 7 is just a copy of the assessor advice or the supplemental assessment. And you'll see it was issued to the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, which is the registered owner of this property. The WRHA, of course, is the owner of multiple hospitals throughout the city of Winnipeg. Tab 8 confirms the charitable status of the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, which is obviously well known and well established. I'm going to skip to tab 10 for the moment, and tab 10 is an email, which is the very last page of the brief from the Chief Operating Officer from Deer Lodge Health Center. And I'd asked her to confirm whether or not the services provided at the Movement Disorder Clinic are insured services within the meaning of the Act. And you can see the highlighted section, the services provided at MDC are insured outpatient services that are provided in a hospital setting by nature of where the clinic is located, which of course is at the Deer Lodge Center. There is a case I've included at tab 9. I don't know that it's necessary to go through that case in any detail, but very briefly, this dealt with the Seven Oaks General Hospital and the city of Winnipeg and the province of Manitoba. The issue there was whether the Wellness Institute or the Wellness Center at Seven Oaks, if any of you are familiar with it, it's a facility adjacent to the main hospital at Seven Oaks where there's rehabilitation medical services, insured services that are provided in that building. There are also other amenities in that building, including a large fitness area that can be accessed by members of the public. And there was a dispute as to whether this was to receive the benefit of the exemption under a hospital should only be school tax exempt, partially school tax exempt, and how do we deal with it? And the court in that case determined that this facility was entirely considered to be part of the overall Seven Oaks hospital facility, and there were insured services being provided in that building, and it was entirely exempt, and it is exempt to this day. So to summarize, value is not an issue. The property, of course, would clearly meet the definition or the exemption requirements for a school tax exemption under 23(1)(e) of the Act. However, this facility is not like many of the other access centers that Ms. Scheibel referred to, which are there are medical services that are being provided in those access centers, but they are not hospital services or insured services as defined in the legislation, and they're not necessarily affiliated with a particular hospital. There is one example, however, where there is a large access center, and that is at the Grace Hospital, adjacent to the Grace Hospital, previously known as Access St. James. If any of you, I expect all of you are familiar with Grace Hospital and its layout, but a number of years ago, the Access Center was constructed on the Grace Hospital grounds. That hospital was initially designated as school tax exempt. It is on a separate roll, similar to 200 Woodlawn. Many years ago, the issue came before the Board of Revision and ultimately was resolved. That property is fully exempt to this day. It's known as 280 Booth. It's adjacent to 300 Booth, which is the Grace Hospital, and it is fully exempt as it's considered part of the Grace Hospital. So in summary, this property is unquestionably part of the Deer Lodge Center. There are insured services being provided in this facility. It is used for a hospital within the meaning of the Act, and it should be fully exempt. Those are my comments. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to questions, Mr. Neufeld, did you have anything to add with respect to that presentation?
No, thank you. We'll just leave the audiences.
Thank you. Then Ms. Scheibel, questions for Mr. Mercury?
Yes, please. You provide Seven Oak Hospital,
Yes.
and when we open paragraph 32, Deer Lodge Center, full order in my rebuttal, if you want to see.
I'm sorry, you were referring to paragraph 32 of the case, the Seven Oaks Hospital case?
By
Yes,
definition,
I have it.
in the Municipal Assessment Act, certain recognized hospitals are excluded from the definition as hospital
Yes.
for access purposes. Such as hospital is one owned and operated by the Government of Canada. Therefore, Deer Lodge Hospital is not a hospital with meaning of Municipal Assessment Act.
Yes, so you're reading a case from 2001. If you look, I gave you the regulation as it exists today. The Deer Lodge Center is a designated hospital.
Are you allergic Deer Lodge Center for itself in split class property exemption as hospital and school tax as personal care home as a Municipal Assessment Act 23(1) EE? And interesting, Deer Hospital is different from other hospitals. It says that the public cannot just go there for service. Example, there no emergency service at the time of Queen Beach decision, what you refer for. It appears it was even even defined as a hospital. Therefore, Deer Lodge Hospital is not a hospital with meaning of Municipal Assessment Act.
I'm sorry, what are you reading from, Ms. Scheibel?
It's information about Deer Lodge Center.
Okay,
So this property has exemption, partial exemption, like a hospital, and biggest part a school tax exempt as personal care home. So our position still that it's a school exempt property.
Ms. Shable, was there a
Well-
question there? Was there a question there?
Just because agent provides that it's a full hospital. Just for information, Deer Lodge Hospital Center has hospital and also school tax exempt portion for personal care home. Did you aware of about
Yeah.
it?
Yes, and so I understand your position, and it is true that a portion of the Deer Lodge Center is a personal care home and is subject to a school tax exemption, not the full exemption, because it is not a hospital in accordance with the legislation. It's a personal care home where insured services are not provided in portions of that facility. However, there are other portions of the property that are clearly part of the hospital services, insured services being provided in the Deer Lodge Center. The Deer Lodge Center is clearly identified in the hospital designation regulation as a hospital. And this clinic that we are speaking of, the movement disorder clinic, is part of the hospital services, not part of the personal care home aspect of Deer Lodge. So there are two, you are correct in that there are portions of the facility adjacent to it that are designated and only school tax exempt. That is correct. But the hospital portion of Deer Lodge Center is fully exempt. This is part of the hospital.
I know you're aware that clinic also different from hospital. It includes the building history in composition, in presentation, and also good as it demonstrates the building wasn't constructed as hospital facility. Would you agree?
No, I don't agree. The definition of a hospital includes not only the main hospital building, but includes all kinds of ancillary buildings, parkade structures on or adjacent to hospital facilities are fully exempt, even though there's no insured services being provided in those buildings. There are clinics in multiple hospitals throughout the city of Winnipeg that you go and see specialized clinics. This one happens to be in a separate building on the same grounds. It may not be physically connected by a tunnel, but that's not how the legislation works. So I would strongly disagree with your suggestion that it is not part of the hospital.
No further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Nesbitt, have you any questions?
Yes, Mr. Mercury, are the personnel in the movement clinic, the doctors, nurses, are they employees of Deer Lodge Hospital, or are they employees of something else?
My understanding is that they're employees of the Deer Lodge Center. It's called the Deer Lodge Center
Okay,
now,
yeah,
is the name of it. That's my understanding.
Okay.
That they're, and to be providing insured services under the Act, that is, my understanding, is done by employees of ultimately the government, but from the hospital themselves.
Okay, thank you for that. May I, Mr. Chair, can I just ask a question of the assessor right now, or would you like me to wait?
May as well do it now, please.
Okay. Ms. Shable, if the movement center was physically located within a hospital, would it be exempt from taxation?
If it's part of hospital, yes.
Yes.
Our
And-
position that it's belong Winnipeg Regional Health Authority. In all assessed centers, we treat like school tax exemption. We try to be consistent.
But a hospital that provides specialized services, such as this, related to certain movement disorders, if it was located within a hospital, would that component of the building be exempt?
Yes, if it would be built for hospital at the beginning. In our case, it's a adjacent building. It was a historical building built, was not constructed as hospital.
No, I appreciate that. So you're suggesting that if a building was not originally constructed as a hospital for hospital purposes, and then that would preclude it from an exemption just because it wasn't constructed as such?
Because doctors provide service by referral. And yes, for us it's free, but government pay for our visits. It's a clinic, it's not hospital. And by the way, it is a Grace Hospital Access Center. It's partial exempt from hospital. Also school tax. I looking right now.
280 Booth?
Yes. In our position, Deer Hospital has two exemptions, hospital exemption and care exemption for school taxes. How we treat this building, school exemption only, because it provides services like normal clinic by referral.
Okay, I'm not quite sure.
Standalone building on its own role is not conjoined into the hospital as one economic unit.
Okay, Ms. Shable, I'm just going to interrupt. You're going back into your testimony, into a summary. You will have an opportunity to summarize, but please do not repeat your submission now. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Mercury, just going back, you've indicated that, yes, you acknowledge it's on a separate role, but that is an administrative matter. It's like the hospital has expanded and provided more services in an adjacent building that it now needs to provide the services.
That's correct.
That's your position. Okay.
Yeah,
Kind of like a
yes.
school using something not adjacent to the school.
That's correct. It's also on contiguous land, and so there's a provision in the Act that talks about contiguous land, but I'd like to correct something that Ms. Scheibel stated incorrectly. 280 Booth, the access center, is exempt. I'm looking at the roll right now. I dealt with this property. I'm not sure what she's stating. There's a small portion of that, which is $205,000 of a $13 million assessment that's taxable, and that's excess land. $13.148 million, 280 Booth is exempt, fully exempt. So that's incorrect, what she's just stated. The St. Boniface, and so I don't know where that's coming from, Ms. Scheibel.
Because I can see a school tax exemption portion, but it's built, Grace Hospital built conjunction with hospital.
It was built several decades after that hospital was constructed. 280
And they connected.
Okay, well, I don't want to go back over the issue, but to answer Ms. Nesbitt's question, there's nothing in the Act, there's nothing in any case law that suggests that to be part of a hospital or to get the benefit of the hospital exemption, you have to be physically connected. In fact, there are multiple examples. The Act goes on to say that it not only includes the main hospital building, but such other buildings that are necessary and usual to the operation of a hospital. And so that could include, as I mentioned, an ambulance garage, a parkade structure, maintenance buildings, various other structures, and certainly a movement disorder clinic that's part of the campus. The St. Boniface Hospital, adjacent to it on separately separately titled property, is a parkade structure. It's fully exempt. There are also leased facilities in the Dominion Shopping Center. The St. Boniface Hospital leases a portion of that shopping mall. It's fully exempt. That shopping mall was not built as a hospital, but hospital services are provided in that shopping mall, and it's exempt. So there are several other examples of this across the city. I don't think I need to go there, but let's look at the legislation and what it states and what is actually happening in this facility. That's the test.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mercury. I have no additional questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Diamond, any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Mercury, I just want some clarification for sure. And you did refer to the decision in the Seven Oaks General Hospital case regarding the Wellness Institute.
Yes,
And it does contain that paragraph 32 that Ms. Scheibel referred to, which in it indicates that Deer Lodge Hospital is not recognized as a hospital in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. You indicated to her that was then, and that subsequently the regulation came into being that did clearly designate the Deer Lodge Hospital as a hospital. So what
that's
was
correct.
what was the date of that regulation that was subsequent to this decision?
Well, if you look at Mr. Diamond, page 25 of the brief.
Let me go over there, please.
Yeah. So I don't have the specific answer for you, but you can see this is the current hospital designation regulation, and it lists the various hospitals throughout the provinces. On the Winnipeg region, you can see third on that list is Deer Lodge Center. It looks like there was various amendments to this regulation over time, going back to 1994, 95, then 2001, 2003, 2014. I haven't pulled those all up to answer your specific question. I'd have to do some research as to when that actually came into be. All I know is that currently it's a designated hospital, and I don't have access to what the regulation looked like at the time of Justice Schwartz's decision back in 2000. I think it was 2001, if I'm not mistaken. But yes, 2001.
No, we have the date of the decision. We don't have the date of the regulation.
That's correct. Yeah.
Being added. So that's why I know it's clearly opener in the decision, but it does raise a question that I had, and it does require clarification. Now, at the same time, I do see the regulation, and you've indicated this is the current regulation right now.
That's correct.
And it clearly does designate Deer Lodge as a hospital.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. You answered my question.
Thank you.
And I don't think I have any questions that haven't already been addressed. Thank you. Ms. Scheibel, you made reference to rebuttal evidence. Is there rebuttal evidence, Ms. Graywood?
In my rebuttal evidence, I put a full order about first rebuttal was difference in square footage. It's a confirm. And
I don't have a copy
Sir,
of what Ms. Scheibel is looking at, so I don't.
Ms. Scheibel, just stop for a minute, please. Ms. Scheibel. Ms. Graywood, has there been rebuttal evidence provided for our review?
I put it in the SharePoint folder when she mentioned it, and I did send it by email to Mr. Mercury and Mr. Neufeld as well.
Okay, I will have a look. So Ms. Scheibel, just hold on a second, please, and wait until that is distributed.
All right. I will say, Mr. Chair, I have some concerns with this rebuttal being provided halfway through the hearing. They're typically supposed to be provided a couple of days in advance. I'm not certain why it's just being provided now. I'll look at it briefly. I see she's provided the full copy of the decision that is already in my brief. I have the full copy of the decision. There's nothing.
I think you're ahead of me. Okay, there we are. Yes, there's the decision. Okay, and what I'm looking at first is the permit issuance.
Yeah,
not in dispute.
If I could, I'm assuming that's to address the square footage discrepancy, and our data was from older than the 2005, so we are okay with the city square footage. So
okay,
yeah.
Then let me ask Ms. Scheibel this before we go down any rabbit holes. What is the purpose of this rebuttal evidence, Ms. Scheibel?
It's already addressed. Rebuttals.
It's already been.
Yes.
So it's been addressed?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then we don't need to deal with that any further. Ms. Shable, have you any summary with respect to this matter?
Yes, please. City position as the subject property, it's a school exam. It's consistent with how we treat assessed center owned by Winnipeg Regional Health Authority. This is the reason we treat the property as 4S, school types. It's Winnipeg Regional Health Authority ownership. Otherwise, other outpatient or doctor referral clinic in the city, for example, Winnipeg Clinic, are taxable as medical clinic. But for this property, we provide school tax exemption. So I'm asking to confer our 2025 assessment school tax exemption on 1,253,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mercury, any summary?
Very briefly, I think you have my position in full. This is a facility that is on the Deer Lodge Center campus. It is adjacent. It is contiguous to the Deer Lodge Center hospital proper, if you will. There are insured services being provided at this clinic. You have the uncontested evidence from the chief operating officer that these are hospital services that are being provided. Deer Lodge Center is a designated hospital. This is part of the Deer Lodge Center. It is not at all similar to the access center decisions that are throughout the city of Winnipeg. I've been involved in pretty sure all of them. Those are leased, for the most part, leased facilities by WRHA or Shared Health. They are not necessarily affiliated with any particular hospital, but they are providing medical services or support for sick persons, and they are entitled to school tax exemptions. The exception being the property at 280 Booth, which is an access center, but it is affiliated with and connected to and considered part of the Grace Hospital, and it's fully exempt. The situation is clearly the same with 200 Woodlawn. And so those are my submissions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Then, having heard the evidence, we will conclude this matter. Mr. Mercury, are you appearing on the next matter as well?
I will be, just for some background information and to hopefully assist the board, but it will be primarily handled with by Mr. Neufeld. On the next matter, just before we dive into the evidence, on that matter, I have had some involvement. I just think it would be helpful to provide some overall context to why that matter is before the board. Once again, I think 2 of 3 members of this panel had heard of this appeal at 330 St. Mary a number of months ago, and maybe wondering why it is back on the docket as a supplemental.
Can I stop you right there, please,
Yep.
Mr. Mercury? I'm going to have Ms. Shable introduce the property so that
Yep.
it's for the board properly, and for anyone who's following along on the YouTube channel, or at least for the purposes of the record, that the property is introduced before any evidence or overview is given to it. Ms. Shable, then I would ask you to introduce the property at 330 St. Mary. And once it's introduced with the file number, the street address, and perhaps some of the information on page 1, if we could allow Mr. Mercury to give us a short, I'm presuming, overview
Yes.
as to why this is appearing today. If that's acceptable, Ms. Shable?
Yes.
Thank you. Then would you please proceed to introduce the property, and then we'll hear the overview.
File number F25-33, roll number 12093401500. We assess 2025 years with reference date 2023 for 27,079,000. That include 1,375,000 school tax exempt and 25,704,000 taxable. The subject proper, it's office building, 12-story building. I guess I can stop, yeah?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay.
And I recognize this property. I believe I was on. So if you could please provide an overview before we continue with Ms. Shable's evidence, that may help us.
Yeah, I think this would be helpful because there's some important context to why we're here again today, really dealing with the same issues that you dealt with a number of months ago. So what happened, of course, is back in June of 2024, in the ordinary course, the city issued its 2025 assessments. That was appealed by the agent Colliers, and then it was kind of put in the queue at the Board of Revision, of course, for hearing. However, in July, the end of July of 2024, unbeknownst to the agent at the time, the city issued a supplemental assessments for 2023, 2024, and 2025. And this kind of flew under the radar. The supplementals were clearly intended to deal with a portion of the property that was subject to a school tax exemption, in particular Mennonite Central Committee, which had recently taken on some space in that building. And that's recognized in the assessor's brief. You'll see a small portion of the property that's school tax exempt. But for whatever reason, administratively, this was not brought to the Board of Revision's attention, and may have not even been made aware to Ms. Scheibel at the time, presumably not, because in November of 2024, the assessment appeal proceeded. This is on the original assessment, the original 2025 assessment. And you may recall, Mr. Chair, I believe you chaired that panel.
Yes.
I believe Ms. Nesbitt was also on that panel, and one other member who's not present today. So the brief that was submitted by Ms. Scheibel, the assessment department, I believe is identical to the brief that was submitted to you as part of this hearing. The original value was the same as what you see now in the assessment. However, floating kind of unknown to everyone at the time, including the agent, the assessor, the panel, was this supplemental assessment, which is essentially rendered null and void the assessment that was being considered by the Board of Revision. This didn't come to our attention until well after the fact. In fact, after well, let me back up. So the board heard the appeal. It issued, there was a revision to the assessment, and a copy of the board order is actually in the Collier's material, but there was an adjustment to the assessed value. And if you have the Collier's brief, I think it's included in the, I can pull it up, but it's included in the material. You just
Yes,
find
it is
it.
included. And just one correction, it was not Ms. Nesbitt who was.
I'm sorry.
It was Ms. McFadden who was not.
I'm sorry. My mistake there.
That's quite all right. We're all the same.
Yeah, I guess. Sometimes get confused. But
No problem.
but what was troubling at the time, and when I became involved, is the supplemental assessment. Not only kind of rendered null and void the original one, and nobody had knew what was going on, but the supplemental had actually increased the assessed value of the property, which really never should have occurred, because the only reason that the supplemental was being issued was to deal with the change in liability at the school tax exemption. And so, and I'm just trying to verify the amount here. Just one moment. So the supplemental for 2025 that was issued was, just try to find that. And I don't have it in front of me. In any event, it was, yes, it was increased to $28,291,000. Okay, so the value had increased by about $1.2 million, the supplemental assessment. And it's not clear why that occurred, but it appears to have occurred as a result of just the system, the model had kind of generated that number once the school tax exemption had been applied. So this all came to our attention. So essentially we had a Board of Revision order that one of the three of you was on. You already heard the matter on its merits, but there was now an administrative problem, and that assessment was, that appeal was essentially of an appeal of a defunct role, if you will. And so we were left with a situation where the owner, 330 St. Mary, has been stuck with a supplemental assessment that nobody really knew about. Not only that, worse than that, had increased the value of the assessed value. So this came to my attention. I had corresponded with Mr. Ruda on behalf of the city of Winnipeg to try to get this clarified. And our request was that this was clearly an error and the city should not have increased the value of that assessment. It's not clear what happened with the notice of it. It's a bit odd that this supplemental would go out in late July, kind of out of nowhere. And you can see how these things are sometimes missed. But nonetheless, the city, we had requested that a supplemental be issued in light of this situation to return the value back to what the Board of Revision had already decided. And that was a slight reduction to the assessed value. Because for us to go back and have an appeal all over again, we're just really duplicating our efforts. The city declined that request, but did indicate that there was an error. And so what they did administratively is they issued another supplemental assessment and they returned it to the original assessed value of, it was getting my $27 million and change, I believe. And that is the position advanced by Ms. Scheibel today and with the school tax exemption there. So essentially what the city has done is brought everything back to square one as it should have been. And frankly, as Ms. Scheibel had understood it was back in November of 2024. So we're all back on the same footing. I'm hoping you're all following me there in terms of the chronology, but so without going through all of you're going to hear the evidence again, I suppose we have to, but my submission at the outset is that this really is, in all sense of the words, a duplicative hearing from what the hearing that occurred in November. And although the agent had asked for a lower value than what the board had already recognized, it seems to me that it would be appropriate to simply ask the board, I'll defer. Mr. Neufeld has a different number in his brief, but if the board wishes to have a fresh hearing on all of the evidence, previously it has two options really. It has, for option A is to simply respect the earlier determination made by the board, under one member of which was on the same panel here, or to just look at everything afresh again and then consider both parties and leave it to the newly constituted panel to come to a fresh decision. But I will leave that to your good judgment in terms of how you'd like to deal with the matter. But I thought that it would be helpful context, very important context for the board to fully understand why on earth are we here again dealing with the same property and the same values and the same positions that we were in November. So that's the context I have for you. There's no disagreement, of course, it appears between the parties on the school tax exempt portion itself. I think everyone's on the same page that space that's occupied by MCC is school tax exempt. It simply is a valuation issue that has already been determined by the board back in November. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that historical context, but I do feel it was important to provide the board with that background.
Thank you. I know when I saw that this property, and I did recall it, I pulled my notes from it, and I had some concerns about why we were back again. That does explain it, not completely to my satisfaction, but it does explain why we're here. That having been said, it will certainly be evidence that the board will consider, the panel will consider in our deliberations. But this property is before us at the moment. There has been evidence filed, and I think we should hear the submissions that are going to be made. Ms. Scheibel, you've heard all of what was said, including the, reissuance of the supplemental report, which seems to supersede, or which does supersede, the order as made in November of 2024. Is your position going to be consistent with the evidence that you filed, or is it going to be more in line with the board's decision from November 2024? Is your intention to proceed with the hearing as it is with the evidence that you filed today or for today?
What I filed today, because
Okay.
in 2024, bring to our attention about school exempt portion, and we proceed to school exempt for 2023, 24, and 25. It's regulation how we apply exemption portion.
Okay, then what we will do is we will proceed with respect to the school tax exemption is not at issue, is it? No, Mr.
Not
Murphy nodding no. So the school tax exemption portion is not exempt. It's it's not at issue. It's a valuation issue here at this stage. So if that's position, Ms. Shable, if you can proceed with your evidence,
Yeah,
please.
Just before the only
Sorry.
issue I think that the board would grapple with is the proportionate amount of the school tax exempt space. I believe the leasable area is identified in the material in terms of the MCC space. So I haven't analyzed that, frankly, but you'll have that evidence in terms of the amount of space that they occupy, and then proportionately how much of that space should be school tax exempt would just follow whatever determination you're going to make on the value. If that makes
Sure.
sense. So
Certainly,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ms. Shable?
Okay. Subject property office building, 12th floor, original built in 1979. Suite on land area, 22,678 square feet. With plan area, 10,759 square feet. Had basement area, 22,566 square feet. That give us gross floor area, 171,905 square feet. Leasable area assessed 146,979. It has indoor parking 65 stall, outdoor parking 23 stall. On page number 2, I was look just overall subject property leases. I look for income expenses mailer for full 2022. It showed potential rent 2.3 million. I divide by square footage occupied because it's on page number 2 shows that 119,000 around. Occupied give us around $19.60 per square foot, just subject property estimate lease average. On page number 3, we have assessment department analysis for this property, 330 Portridge. You can see that in 2022, average $17.83. If you and weight average $17.73, we're looking for 2 first lines for 2022. If you stabilize 2020, 21, 23, it will be around $17 per square foot. On same page number 3, I just increase mashtag this 2020, 21, 22, so it's easy to read. So we can see that average around $17 per square foot. On page number 4 through 7, location of subject property located in downtown, rectangle shape of building, street view on land, street view on page number 5, 6. It's a zoning multi-use sector between St. Mary, Hargrave, York and Donald in this intersection. So on page number 8, I provide rent comparables from OB property from Johnson report. We can see that rent comparables 363 Broadway, all on Broadway, 155 Carlton, Gary, Graham, Main Street, Pioneer, Portridge, St. Mary, all similar type of properties, and asking net rent between $10 to $18 per square foot. For parking lot rent comparables, I provide 6 comparables on 170 Gary, 255 Fort, Edmonton, Donald, York, Gary. It shows that media one stabilized net operating income per stall per month average $158 per square foot. For parking structure, I provide 4 comparables on 374 Taché, 299 Fort, 100 King and Lombard. It showed average stabilized net operating income per stall per month $114 per square foot. On page number 9, started our subject property market and home. First, parking structure. We assess 65 stall at $103.50 monthly net units per stall. Give us net operating income $18,730. For parking structure, vision model generates 7% capitalization rate. So this portion of assessment $1,153,000. On page number 10, parking lot assessment. We assess 23 parking lot for $92 per stall monthly net units rent. Give us net operating income $25,392. Overall capitalization rates 4.5%. So estimated value of parking lot $564,000. On page number 11, income stream for taxable portion, we assess total 139,379 square feet. It's $14.87. Give us potential rent around $2 million. We saw that average it's $17 per square foot. It's fair. For this type of property, vacancy loss 12%, expenses not recoverable 3%. In shortfall, its cost of unoccupied space $14 per square foot. Give us net operating income $1,535,089. For model generate 6.4% capitalization rate that give us estimate value of office taxable $23,987,000. On page 13, our school tax exemption portion on 7,598 square feet occupied by tenants, model generally $15.54, give us potential rent $118,000 roughly. We apply same 12% vacancy loss, 3% not recoverable expenses, a shortfall for occupation vacant space $14 per square foot. Give us net operating income $88,022. Model generates same 6.4% capitalization rate, so that give us estimate value of school exemption $1,375,000. On page number 14, all these incomes together give us $27,079,000. On page 16, capitalization rate comparison table. On page 18, started income expenses mailer provided to us. We can see a revenue on page number 18, expenses on page number 19, and following by page 20. On page 21, it's income final, so net adjusted net income 1.6 million. If you look on page 14, we estimate 1.7 million. It's very close. On page 22 through 23, 24, it's tenants role information, what tenants inside. I realize it's very small, so I provide bigger photos, bigger information about tenants in my rebuttal, or we can just look online, zoom this information. On this information, if you open, let's go through right away. On page 22 of my brief, if you zoom in this first table, everyone with me?
Yep.
It's page, okay. It will be page 5 of my rebuttal, but it's more bigger, but zooming, it's okay. We can see that, to example, first tenants, it's units 100, 150. It's commercial net, lease type. Lease occupied space 1,935 square feet. Lease signed in 2020 for 5 years. Give us annual rent area or net rent $18 per square foot. Or another property, it's units 110, it's main floor, 205 at second floor for bank. It's commercial net, and they showed that lease of 6,677 square feet. If you're going to annual, $21.16 per square foot average. And you can see on following units 205 specific on second floor rent for $17 per square foot for 2.7 thousand square feet, and main floor 110 units for $24 per square feet. We analyze all these tenants roles, and this information was generated in our overall study on page number 3 that showed altogether average $17.83 per square foot. And if you're going on page, and you can see that leases, all leases, type leases, net commercial net on first, on second page, third. And when we're going to page 23 of my brief, and we zoom in, I look specific, it's page 4 of 6. I look on a summary of lease types. It showed that because agent provide information that it's gross semi-lease, but we can see commercial net lease, it's for 20 tenants and only 1 tenant's retail gross lease. Okay, so based on evidence presented in my brief, we asking to confirm 2025 assessment at $27,079,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, do you have any questions? Or sorry, I should start with Mr. Mercury. Have you any questions on the valuation, or are you participating in this aspect of it, or what?
No questions from me. Mr. Neufeld will be handling this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then, Mr. Neufeld, I just don't want to skip over anybody. Mr. Neufeld?
Thank you. Mr. Scheibel, on your page 2, you supply a subject sale of 2012. Are you aware that includes 2 other roles for the parking lots outside?
Yes, it's a multi-role, so that's why
Okay.
it's, I don't
Thank you.
mention.
And then, so right below that there, you have an overall net lease of the subject property is 1960. You took a base rent and divided it by the occupied area. Are you aware that that base rent is the base gross potential of all area, including that vacant?
Like I mentioned, if you look on my income expenses mailer tenants provided, only units, only last, if you look on page 4 or 5, only one tenant's gross lease, because it's
Okay, that's not my question. You took
gross
under
net.
the base rent 2.339 million divided by the occupied area of 119,418. This is a base rent. You see below it there, you've got it on the same page. It's a base rent for the gross potential. So that's the base rent for all 146,000 square feet, is it not?
No, this
Are the subject
rent was generated by occupied area only.
Okay, so if you can go to your
190,000.
page 19, sorry, 18. And you see there on the fourth category there, it says vacancy, base rent, free rent, and they subtract 282,718. Do you see that?
Free rent revenue.
Vacancy, base rent, and free rent, base rent.
I look
So
at only one first line. We have
okay, I understand
rent,
that.
we
But
have parking.
you're taking only the occupied area and dividing that and coming up with a rent of 1960. But that doesn't include the deduction here. You completely omitted that fact. So it would stand to
But
reason that the
for
2.3 would be based on the full area, would it not?
when you look, we have parking rent, sign rent, storage rent.
Okay, that's, so we're not talking about
All
parking or sign. Just
all
the base.
rent revenue reduction or tenants improvements, it's not part income approach.
Okay, but you took a vacant, just the occupied area and took it out of the entire base rent, which includes unoccupied space. Is that true?
Yes, it's net rent collected from all tenants.
You do understand gross potential means the gross potential rent, including vacant space. And then it's that later deducted in the base rent and the free rent.
It just overall, but if you look on page, it's roughly $19.60.
Well, no, it's far.
Analysis of this property for several years showed a $17 per square foot average.
Okay, moving on. On your page 330 Portage, and you have 330 St. Mary. Is that done the same way? Are you taking out the vacant space to calculate it based on gross potential rents?
Okay, you're right. On page number 330, please cross this. I'm wrong. We're looking only second page, second table, 330 St. Mary.
Well, no, my question then, yeah, okay. So then my question is, are you doing the same thing here? Is this also base gross potential rents being calculated on occupied space only?
No, in this case, it was each rent provided in the building was analyzed to come to this average. Like I
And how
showed
are you showing that?
roll, we have net rented for each unit. In all this number was analyzed and give us average $16.91.
Well, I don't believe you have, yeah, so you have total leased area of 61,000 in 2022. I mean, that's less than a third of the building. Or sorry, more than a third, but is that 1691 just on the 61,000 leased? Where is that calculation coming out of your vacant space?
Vacant space $18, 18.7% in 2022, but if you bring average for 3 years between 2020 2022, it's only 8.5%, and we apply 12%. It's very well
Okay.
supported
We're
by.
not talking about the vacancy. I'm talking about how you calculated these rents. Are you admitting vacant space for these ones as well?
No, it's only occupied space.
So it is only occupied space. You're taking the occupied space and then the base gross potential for these, just as you did for the page above it.
No, it was each rent was calculated separate to bring weight average for $17.25 for occupied space in collected rent. How it was analyzed.
Okay, I don't see how that's done, but I don't think, I'll move on. Thank you. Moving to page 8. The first table there, you've got asking rates, is that correct?
Which page?
Page 8.
It's asking net rent. It's from Johnson report to see what's happened across the
Okay.
city.
Included in the Johnson report is about a 20% vacancy in the OFB. Do you think with that high of a vacancy, and you have vacancy rates actually provided there in each building, with vacancy that high, do you think these buildings are getting their asking rents?
You can look at 330 St. Mary, like subject property, it will be second from the bottom. Asking rent $17 per square foot. And when we look on tenants roll, it's supported.
Okay, but again, you've got no vacancy rate in that
$24 per square
330.
foot asking rent, and its actual leases exist.
Right, sure, but you're asking for, you have $17 asking rent, and if you do go to 330 St. Mary, it's the second from the bottom in that table. You stated earlier it's 18%. If there's an 18% vacancy and you're asking for 17, do you think $17 is going to always be achieved when the vacancy is that high?
By analyzing vacancy for subject property for several years, it's only 8.5%. Asking rent on page number 8, I already showed how we look in 330 St. Mary Avenue, average $17 per square foot. It's very well supported by income expense mailer provided to us. And we already look at tenants rolls.
Would you disagree that asking rents are not the best indicator of value when vacancy is this high?
But we was looking on actual rented subject property.
Okay, but we're focusing on this table here.
It's $17 to $24 just by 2 first lines tenants.
Would you agree that asking rents are not great indicators of value when vacancy is this high? Yes or no?
It's asking rent that it was achieved. It's if in this Johnson report showed $17 and subject property, it's achieved here. $17 per square foot.
I'll move on again. I don't think that answers my question, but that's fine. Page 9, 10, 11, and 12, you've got, and 13, sorry. You've got multiple different workups here. Are they all under one role and one title?
It's a market and home for different partial of property.
I understand. Are they all under one title?
Yeah, it's
Okay,
subject.
so how do you calculate separate capitalization rates if all of these must be
generated?
I understand it's model generated, but when this sells on the market, it would only achieve one single cap rate. Is that correct?
No, for parking structure, it's 7% because it's how we estimate parking structure across the city to be consistent. On parking lot, 4.5% across the city, similar to be consistent. For office class B building, our generated 6.4% capitalization rate for this type of property.
Okay, but again, if they sell, it's only selling once. They're not selling 4 portions of it separately, are they?
But it's model generated. We have to separate estimation.
Well, I think we're looking at what it would sell for, and if it
If
would
you look
sell,
on page 14, average 6.39% capitalization rate. On page 19 in summary, income value summary, it's around 6.4% together.
moving on to your page 16, are you aware that the Collier's cap rates that you were provided were published in error, and that the city has been provided with corrected version of them multiple times, and once actually at every appeal?
I'm not aware about it. You didn't support today hearing.
Yeah, I'll get into it. That's fine. You're calling this is the OFB. Now you have your 20th percentile and your 80th percentile, both at 7. Yet you apply a 6.4 to the main part of the building. How does that come about?
Because it is 7% for 60% of properties, but we have still 20% low and 20% higher. So 6.4, it's very well supported by lowest Collier 6.25 and
Okay, and again, I will get into in that presentation, but the 625 was an error. I'm just trying to understand how
it was
you say
reported.
range is 7 to 7, but apply 6.4.
I think the answer Ms. Shable gave was that it was model driven.
Okay, thank you. That'll work. You had mentioned on page 21, and I getting close to the end here. You mentioned on page 21 that the adjusted net income was 1.6, and you're applying 1.7, and that's very close. 100 grand in difference. Would you agree that the model's off by 100 grand based on that statement?
If you look on page number 20, we have to bring back for this net operating income, not operating expenses. Because for income approach, we apply accommodation, utilities, tax, and management. All what reported more should be bring back to 1.6. It will be around 1.7 million like we assess. It's very close.
And then your vacancy you're applying is
12%.
12% on the office portion, right? Okay. And the actuals are higher, is that correct?
And actual, if you look on page number 3, we analyze between 2020, it was 5.2%, 2021, 1.9% vacancy, 2022, 18.7%. So average 8.5%. So 12%, it's fair. What we
Would you
apply.
agree that the market between 2020 and 2022 is vastly different for the office market?
But for vacancy, we have to do stabilization 3, 5, 10 years.
So sometimes I agree with that, yes, but do you agree the market has changed faster in our office market?
That in 2022 it's higher compared to 20. That's why we do average 8.5%.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Mr. Diamond, questions?
Yeah, my only question is, so the supplemental was ordered based on just the difference in the calculation on the 40 school tax exempt property? Is that what it was?
Exemption portion on page number 30, it's model generated $15.54 for 7,989 square feet. It's model generated 1,375,000.
I understand, but usually when supplementals go out, it's because there's either new construction or significant renovations that make the tax situation change. There was nothing like that in this property. Was it only because of the different allocation towards school tax exempt that the that the supplemental was issued?
And if you look on page 18,
Yeah.
renovation was done. It's line 359225, tenants improvements contra revenue, around $500,000 they take back. It's because it was renovated.
Okay, so that's what gave rise to the supplementary tax bill?
No, because to apply exempt portion, we have to go back to 2023. You apply 2023, 24, 25. And when we separate all streams, it's everything model generated. That's why it's change in value. And we are mandatory to in regulation to provide new supplementary assessment.
Okay, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt, questions?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
I have a question with respect to the supplemental, and Mr. Mercury, if you can answer this, that's great. Ms. Schabel, if you can answer it, it's more for my clarification. It relates to something you said in the introduction, Mr. Mercury, is that the assessment was issued, and at the same time, or very shortly thereafter, a supplemental was issued, which did not get into the system properly or appropriately until the appeal was heard by the Board of Revision, at which point the supplemental came to light. Am I accurate in that?
Yes, so just to back up a little bit, the supplemental appears to have been issued, I think it was July the 29th of 2024, which would have been a little over a month after the original notices of assessment would have gone to all commercial property owners in the city. You know, people aren't generally expecting these mailers to come in, randomly. And we see this often. Where mailers will be issued, nobody's really watching for them. So I'm not sure what happened, but that assessment kind of slipped through the cracks. Appears to have slipped through the cracks at both ends, the taxpayer end and the assessor's end. There's no doubt it was issued administratively, Mr. Chair, but it was, and this just to maybe answer Mr. Diamond's question from earlier, because I think the question was the reason for the supplemental and the renovations. I clarified in my discussions with Mr. Ruda that the whole sole purpose of the supplemental was to deal with the change in liability and the exemption issue. And if you have a copy of the supplemental, and it may be in the, I believe it's in somewhere in the material, you can see the note, the reason for the change in the note in the assessor advice. It has nothing to do with the physical changes in the property or renovations or anything like that. It only dealt with, it was intended to deal with the classification liability apportionment. That's it. Because of course, under the Municipal Assessment Act, the only authority given to the city to issue supplementals is under very specific circumstances. If there's an error or omission, so if they discovered new construction, or if something was missed that that it was truly new, then they can issue a supplemental. The most common example is, renovations, additions, or conversely, if there's damage or destruction to the property mid-cycle, they can issue a supplemental. That wasn't what this was about, and that's why ultimately the city was prepared to grant our request to issue this fresh supplemental to essentially go back to the original drawing board, so to speak. Because they recognize that the increase in value from 27 and change to 28 million and change was not justified. There was nothing in the assessment supplemental notices. There was nothing there that the city was intending to do other than to change the liability apportionment. So if that answers your question, perhaps two questions that had been posed by the board.
That does help a little bit. Thank you. Mr. Diamond, did that answer your question?
It clarified my question. So thank you, Mr. Mercury.
Was all explanation on page 46 on my brief. Yes, change value in liability realty triggered.
Okay,
can-
Ms. Shable, thank you. I have a question, Ms. Shable, about your cap rate table and the calculations that were made. Leaving aside the office, you have different capitalization rates for the income streams with respect to the indoor parking and the outdoor parking. The evidence of parking lot capitalization rates is where in your brief?
In my brief for capitalization, we will look on summary. If you look on page number 14, summary capitalization rate 6.39% average.
Yes, I see that, but you have a separate workup with different capitalizations rate. For example, 4.5% for the outdoor parking and 7% for an indoor parking rate. I'm just wondering, on your table, how is that reflected?
This 7% and 4.5% for parking lot. It's analysis, city analysis, all existing parking lots when we came for this number. It's very well supported statistical by analyzing information across the city. And we consistent with this type of capitalization rate for parking structure every time 7% and parking lot 4.5% across the city suburban.
And that's the number that's just assigned by the city, by the mall.
It was estimated by analysis of sale parking lot across the city. It's statistical proven number.
As is the model generated cap rates. They're all statistically as a result of sales.
Yes.
That's correct? And
Correct.
you have office, industrial, retail, multifamily, and hotel. Where's the parking lot form so we can see the range? Or is there one?
It's not provided here, but we have full study in our department.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't have anything further. Does anyone, before we hear Mr. Neufeld's evidence, does anyone require a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Couldn't hurt. I get some more.
Perhaps we'll take 5 minutes. I see it's 2:41. If we can be back at 2:46 or 2:47 and continue on. So, Ms. Graywood, if we can take 5 minutes, please. Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting back to order, please. We had taken a break in the middle of the hearing with respect to 330 St. Mary, and Mr. Neufeld, I believe you are up.
Thank you. Property 330 St. Mary. We valued it by going through the statement and using the vacancies that are in the statement. So when you see that we have a 0%, that might be a difference from when it was brought forward last time. I think it makes a lot more sense to go through the statement and do it the way that the statement has done it. And they take it off. So we don't apply a double dip of it. We take it out in our actual income calculation. And then same goes for shortfall. So at the bottom of my table on page 1 there, that's the as full value. And of course, I mention again, that value is the gross potential. So that, sorry, that isn't as full. That's an error because that would be with the vacancy taken out. So the 3,662,354 is with the vacancy out. And then the expenses are direct from the statement for a value of 1,625, and then we don't remove it again. The structural reserve for 2% is a standard parameter that's on most assessments. And then we took out the parking strictly because the statement includes those 2 other roles I did mention that sold with it, and they are assessed separately. So our parking income is matching the city's. The city has a lot of data for parking rates. It's not generally challenged by us for the parking rates per stall. The issue always being the cap rate. They're putting on cap rates that I can't understand. But that's why, of course, when this building sells, it's going to sell as one economic unit. It is one economic unit. It's one unit. It's not even an economic unit. It's one title. A second cap rate really isn't possible. To have cap rates that separate the underground parking, the outside parking from the building is very strange. going through it, I'll go back up to the statement, but if you go to my page 6, this is the order that was applied at the first round, and the reasoning all went through with everyone there, so I won't get back into it. The page 8 is our a very comprehensive study of vacancy in the city, calculating 15.2 for this Class B downtown. Vacancies are higher than they've been since I've been in this industry in office, and that a lot of it is downtown. Downtown is worse than the suburban, but the overall is very high. What that does is not only does the vacancy rates go up, but when you are renting, you have a lot more inventory to choose from. So a lot of people are actually discounting rents, and that's the reason I brought up before. Those asking rates really aren't the most reliable way to value something. And that is explained in sorry, and then to further to that, page 10 and 11 show subleases that are available. Right now, there's people who are not only a lot of vacant spaces, but there's a lot of people who are trying to lease out some of their space that they have on lease. He's calculating the vacancy, including subleases of all of downtown A, B, and C, at 19.8 for June 2023, which actually does line up quite well with our actuals, which is as a little cleaner in Svetlana's brief at 18% or so. Skipping ahead, the city principal use tables aren't really relevant in our discussion. Skipping ahead to page 25, cap rates go hand in hand with interest rates. Interest rates have been raising, as we know all too well. The cap rates have to raise with them. And that's the general concept of what happens in the market. People are paying less for buildings when they're not getting favorable financing. I won't go through the preferential financing and all that information. I'm sure you've heard it a million times before, but I do want to go to well, it's not in order here, but skipping ahead to page 43 are the Bank of Canada rates, and I'll just quickly go through it. They were as low as 0.5%, and they're currently at 4.75. So that does have a direct correlation to our market. Going back up to my page 42 was the letter I mentioned that this was provided to the city, mainly because they are relying on our cap rate study. We had found out that the one that they are directly relying on was completely sent out in error. They used last year's numbers. It just wasn't updated. They're not, that shows you really how important they are to us and why they really shouldn't be relied upon for valuation. I mean, we try to be more specific with actual sales, but essentially, if we're looking at Office B, they were showing 6.5 to 7.5, but it's really 7.5 to 8.5. And that's on page 42 again. And that was provided to the city. We had hoped that they would stop publishing them incorrectly, but it is what it is. Page 44. These are the actual transactions that would be relevant to the site in the reference period. All but 2 were conversions. They were off, well, sorry, one was a bank and it's now an office, but if you go to the 325 Broadway, that was an office that, because of the high vacancy, they knew it wasn't going to be as suited as an office. It's now being converted to a hotel. 125 Gary, this one I won't put too much reliance on, as it hasn't closed. They had a value and it's been falling apart. But the plan for 125 Gary is to convert that to multifamily because the office market is being hurt so hard. 155 Carlton is a 9% cap rate. The building we're subject is a bit better than this one. It is right down the street from it. But that's really the closest thing to the market transactions that we could be looking at. That's a 9% share sale. 175 Carlton, another conversion. Not really a reliable indicator, but again, that's what's going on, is that nobody's buying these continue their use. 171 Donald, same story. 230 Portage was a former bank that became a dental office, not the most reliable for our purposes, but the 363 Broadway is. Again, this is the building that the municipal board is in. Call it a B minus. It's not published separately, but our internal studies show B and B minus, mainly because there is such a difference between these markets that because of what's happening. The better Bs are renting stronger, and the lower Bs are not quite a C, but we keep them at B minus. That's a 12% cap, and that's with only 90% vacancy, which is factored into the calculation. We add it back in, but that was fairly full. The building wasn't empty. One of the better, it's above average vacancy at only 10%, and it was a 12% cap rate. And the rest not overly reliable as they are conversions, and then the 333 main is just an offer, so it's mostly there for support. I do to touch to what I was mentioning on the classes. We're not arguing that this is a class B, but this is this is just to show the difference. I mean, a class A generally we'll see is the Portage and Main properties. It's really the only real class A's. Class B, this is 240 Graham showing, which is actually same owner. And then that one itself is having major issues, and it could have major changes coming up. And then that's the B minus to show that there is somewhat of a differentiation in cap rates and studies, because there are a huge range in the Bs. And then further down C, D, and so forth. Back to my page 4, which is what we rely on for our study or for our evaluation heavily. I think the best indicator of what a building is worth is the money that is generating. These are buildings that are operated by agents that are constantly trying to fill them up. We happen to lease this one. Our agents control 60% of the downtown office market. They are doing everything they can to fill this up. And that, I think, is the best indicator of a building, especially when it's a bit of for such a high vacancy, is what can they get? And it's important, because comparing it to buildings that are doing better isn't always the best indicator. We need to look at what is there, and that will tell you what it's worth. The major thing being that would be a disagreement. I mean, Svetlana brought forward, Ms. Schabel brought forward the gross potential at 2.339. Not only is that vacant, included unoccupied space, but it's the semi-gross rents. Their expenses are exceeding the CAMs, and that's why what we take is this net revenue, which is my page 4. Near the bottom of the first column there is net revenue. Took out the parking rent because it's not quite. It needs to be calculated differently, and then take out the expenses on page 5, which is just the total operating expenses, to get a value of 1,625,853. Now, the biggest concern I think some people would have is that TI contra revenue. That TI contra revenue is a separate income stream done by the building. They basically finance people moving in. The desk that I'm using right here, this is the building I'm in right now. The desk, this cabinet, that's all part of that revenue. So when this is a publicly traded company that requires to separate that. A lot of buildings won't. They'll bury it in the rent, and it appears so that it appears to be worth more than it is. But these separated TI contract is essentially financing of equipment, financing of desks. That is not something that we're taxing for the building worth. And if it's sold, that contract isn't really with the building. It would likely be sold with it, but it doesn't have to be. That could be separated out. Like I said, with the vacancy and the free rent, we thought it'd be more suited to take that directly, and then have it be part of that. Instead of taking it from the statement and keeping it at a 0% and not having a standardized vacancy. So we're using actual vacancy. And we're applying a 7.75. And as I mentioned, our studies show 7.5 to 8.5. This would be 7.5 would be, if it was full, it would be closer to 7.5. We're using the 7.75. I think that pretty much sums it up too. And again, this has been adjudicated before. Page 6 was the value that was decided by this board. We thought it would be settled on that, but as we do have to re-argue this, I went through it all and gave my reasoning for my valuation. One thing I will mention, I think the not including non-recoverables, I think is strange. This building costs, just leasing alone, it's $120,000 to keep it only at 18%. Sorry, only 82% full. They're spending as much as they can to keep the value as high as they can. We took out the land lease at page 5, as the land lease is actually the cost to manage the lots outside. That's not included in that calculation. But this is the money they have to spend, get it as best as they can, and it's not even quite performing as much as they'd like. This is how tough this market is. And the city's valuation at the gross potential was, sorry, 2 million. So they can't get 2 million, and they also have to spend money to get less than that. And it seems to follow not much reason there that this income would be as high as they're suggesting. And of course, the cap rate is, we're relying on the city's cap rate data when there isn't even a suggestion that it would be below. There's no data to show us why it would be 6.4 when their own data is showing it would fall in the range of 7 to 7. We brought different data that shows 7.5 to 8.5, and I think the 7.75 is very appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Ms. Shable, questions?
Yes, please. Let's open page number 1. I would like verify physical improvements on the property on January 1st, 2025. Agent state that statement include parking on 160 Donald and 325 York at separate roles.
Correct.
For when you look in my brief, it's part of roll number. It's not separate. Just let's straight. It's not.
If you go to my, if I do, sorry, I'll let you finish that question.
You can answer.
Okay, so if you go to my page 4, the reason that was included is the second entry there, parking rent of 556,000. That is the economic unit of the parking rent. That includes 160 and 325 York. And for that reason, we didn't challenge the parking income. The income, we are using yours. Like I said, one of the few things that is accurate is the city's parking income analysis, because it's all public information. You can go online to InPark and see what they're renting and do it. I mean, the expenses could differ, but it's very straightforward. It's almost more like valuing a house. You look at what's there and you look at and you analyze it that way. There isn't complicated statements. It's just what you see.
So our parking.
Yeah, so we took it out for the income calculation and added it at the back to the shortfall there. You can see it.
If you open page 14 of my brief, 1,153 plus 564,000, it gives us 1,717,000.
Sorry, I don't. You're saying there's 1 million more parking
revenue?
Yeah, well, I mean, the cap rates of 4.5. I mean, those cap rates don't exist. So the major difference on our parking valuation would be that we feel, as the market would feel, that you're only placing one cap rate on the entirety of the parking. You can't section it off and sell 23 parking stalls. You can rent them, and that's where you get rental income. You can't sell them, and the 65 are below the building. That's in the basement. That's where I park every day. That's underneath the building. You couldn't, even if you had for some reason just to sell that off, it's like completely impossible. It's physically impossible. So to have different cap rates is, I don't think there's any basis for that in any theory that I understand.
Now we were looking for accessible rentable area. You state that it's only 146,939. If you
Yeah,
look at,
no, it's about 40 square feet different. That kind of thing generally doesn't come up just because, I mean, I know for a fact right now on the 11th floor, we've got most of it's vacant there. There's people looking at, it's about, there's a portion of it that's about, say, 3,000 square feet, but there's 2 doors to it. So often what will happen is 3,000 will get divided into 1,000, 2,000, but that then wall itself becomes lost rentable area. So there is a difference of 40 square feet, and I think that's inconsequential. I generally, that will happen, and I'll go through case management with lots of assessors, and we don't even argue about it. We don't when it's that small, especially, it could be a few hundred, and we wouldn't even bother. And that's just because measurement standards, walls being put in, it's a very common occurrence.
another question, you apply net rent average $11.06. You rarely rely only on existing leases at the property, subject property, correct?
Yes, and that's why we took no vacancy allowance. So we're using the actual vacancy of the property in that. So the 11 would average to everything. That's if you put in your 12%, that would come higher, yes. But I think this is just a simplified way of valuing it because we're going based on what the statement is. It's I find it a lot easier to explain, quite frankly. Especially when the statement itself is just taking out to the 282. So you could, if you wanted, put back 282,000 into that and then put a vacancy of that and shortfall that equal to it. It would come out to the same number and it would be a little more confusing, but I think it just makes it very simple to just do paid rent on the size. But it is calculated correctly.
Yeah. So what is your vacancy apply in this case? How many percentage?
Be the same as what you had supported or showed. It'd be 18. Let's take it from you because it's a little. You show 18.7. Oh, sorry, that's by area. Okay, sorry. No, give me a second. So it'd be the total gross potential of 239. Actually, only 12%. So that's 12% of what is being paid. So the physical area is 18% vacant, but the costs that are being attributed to it are 12. And that's by taking the total vacancy free rent, dividing it by the gross potential.
My estimation 30% vacancy, 30. If you take a base potential 2,359,660 minus your estimated net rent 1,625,853, give us difference 730,807. If this number we divide by gross potential rent, it gives us vacancy, you apply 30%.
Okay, but that's also excluding the deduction for the contract revenue there that's showing, which is not for taxable or real estate
Deduct
items.
for income approach estimation, it's not count for deductible for construction. It's not part of income approach estimation.
I'm not sure I follow.
So in your case, this simple estimation showed 30% vacancy. On page number moment, 5 of your brief. Net operating income 1.5 million, and your estimation only much less 1. No, 1 second.
There isn't it. I mean, of course, the statement does include the parking revenue that does muddy it, and then of course that land lease, as I mentioned. The land lease is the cost to have the booking managed, and then that includes 2 different roles. So that's the reason why we felt it was better to admit.
And on page, 1 second. On page 4 of your brief, you're talking every time about base rent gross potential. If this number 2.3 million be divided by 147,000, let's estimation house net income here, net rent. For
Again,
4
that's just
5
not a net
years.
rent. You've got gross rents in there, and then you've got the contract revenue that's coming out of there. That's
Because we will be, it's contract not part of estimation. Divide now 146,977. If this as a statement showed that net rent for subject property, because it's include all vacancy, everything, $15.92, just statement from the owner, and you applied only $11.06. It's not
well, if you're doing it
subject
a simple way like that, I'm sure you could calculate it. But I think the way I did it speaks for itself. Again, we're not double dipping on the vacancy. We're applying it directly from the statement.
So by the end of day, subject rent $15.92 average.
No, that's the semi-gross number.
Potential rent for whole.
That would be ignoring all the expenses that follow,
Expenses
because
with.
they are higher than.
Okay, which
You can
look
see there, right? Okay, let me answer page 4. The total recovery revenue is 1.751, and the total operating expenses is 2 million. This is not a fully net building, because then those numbers would match.
And if you're going on page 41 of your brief, you provide adjustable cap rate. Would you agree that office building and for Q4, quarter 4 2024, between 6.5 to 7.5?
No, those were the incorrect numbers, and they should match the Q3 is the argument there. Those are submitted prior to a couple years old. They just weren't updated, and they were released. The actual Office B, I guess it's a bit confusing with the header there, but the actual Office B that should have been there submitted is 7.5 to 8.5.
But it's for quarter 3, third quarter of 2023. This
No,
number.
again, the Q4 should match what the Q3 was published as, and that's what it's explaining there. The Q4 was incorrectly sent out, and would match essentially what the Q3 is showing.
But still Q3, it's post-reference.
They're both the same values, is what I'm saying. Yes, the Q3 is, but the Q4 should have been the Q3 of 2023.
And your study showed 6.5 to 7.5, and you still apply 7.75%.
Again, if you read the whole thing, it's that they're not reliable, and they were submitted and published incorrectly. They used old data. The data that should have, the information that should have gone out for Q4 2022 should have matched Q3 2023. And the 7.5, the 6.5, which we're dealing with Office B, 6.5 to 7.5 should actually be 7.5 to 8.5. And if you look at your study, which you submitted, that is more in line with what all the other agencies are submitting. And it's also closer to yours too, which is 7 to 7. The Colliers you can see was all that you had were the lowest ones. And it's because the person who used to do it no longer does it since this issue, submitted old information out.
No further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Nesbitt, questions?
Well, I'm trying to wrap my brain around all those numbers that were just being discussed. I have to say.
Didn't make me, I will admit, it's just, like I said, we were looking at adding back the gross potential, but instead using the statement vacancy, which I think is an unusual way of doing it. But when I did it before, and I think which the last hearing that it was submitted, we had double dipped. We had put this value in and then had the vacancy on top of it. So this time around, I just took it out and put it at 0.
Okay. Now, I just do want to confirm, though, the information you provided on page 1, that does not include the exempt portion, correct?
It does actually, sorry. There's no breakdown of how it should be calculated. It's kind of ambiguous how it's done. We're not, like, I think different panel members do it differently, either by the rentable area or the rentable amount. I think it's a little simpler for an office building to just do the area, but then sometimes you get an industrial building that's renting for 10 versus 5, and then if the exempt space is $10, but then using just the area, you get an average of $750 that's being exempted. With an office building where most of the space is analogous, I think the idea is to just take the area and calculate it. So essentially, I think the assessment did 5.077%. If you look at what we're arguing today, 25 or 1.375 is 5% of 25704. I think it can fluctuate and it'd be variable, and we're not overly concerned of a few $1,000. So I would trust that with the panel of how they want to calculate that. And again, too, it was done by the last hearing at whatever the 24,520 worked out to be. That was done the same way. I think there's just a difference in how it's being calculated, and it's kind of inconsequential as long as it's close.
Okay. Okay, that does clarify that. That's why I was questioning the square footage in that table, because obviously a portion of that was the exempt piece, right?
In
so your table on page 1. Yeah.
So that is inside of that 142.62 would include the 7,300 or so that is exempt.
Okay. Yes, I think the city used 7,598 square
Yes, that sounds correct. Yeah.
So you don't have an issue with that.
No, I think we don't disagree with the area at all. Again, it's calculated in certain ways. If because the building is an office building, it's mostly all the same. We're looking at I think it would make sense to take that 7,500 and divide it by the total area, and then apply that percentage as school exempt.
Okay, thank you. And you indicated that you just brought in the parking income and applied the single cap rate, recognizing it's a whole entity. So that's what you did there, right? Not separate income streams with 2 different cap rates.
No, and we generally disagree with that. I think, sometimes, again, it's the best example is industrial sites, because sometimes you'll see a building that's built in the 70s and they've got lands, they build a new building next door. I can think of a couple that we manage, In that situation, those differ greatly. But again, you want to try to take an average cap rate, but sometimes an average cap rate is just harder to do. So, but in this situation, this is one office tower. This is sold for a single purpose, and that's to include that parking. And I don't feel that a separate cap rate is warranted. So we
Okay.
do the NOI and then add the parking income and then
Apply
Got
the
it.
one cap rate to the whole piece. Okay, thank you. I just needed that clarification. Thank you. No more questions.
Thank you. Mr. Diamond, questions?
Yeah, Mr. Neufeld, so I calculated the 4 income streams and the NOIs for each of them the assessment department has. And it came to $1,650,033. And your NOI, in accordance with the statements that were issued by the owner, show a net income of $1,606,153. So they're about $43,000 apart.
well, that would be I think that's without the calculations of obviously the structural reserve and then the parking the way we did parking differently, and then the non-recoverables. But
I'm
yes,
assuming all the income. I'm assuming all the income's in there.
yeah. So our NOI that's being
It's called adjusted net income or loss on their statement.
sorry,
They've titled it adjusted net income or loss.
yeah. So you're saying that the NOI that the city has is 1.6 together?
Yeah, 1.6. It's a little bit higher. 1.650033, and the income that's shown in the statement is 1.608. So they're both $42,000 apart, which is
Right, but then
pretty close.
if we're at so if I go to Svetlana's page 14, the value that's being capped is 1.729233. And that's shown on her page 4, and that gets to the 27 million.
Okay.
Yeah. So there is, yeah, that's just what I was going off of.
Yeah, I didn't do that. I added up actually the 4 streams, and unless I made a calculation error, the amount I got was 1,650,033. But I'll look again.
Yeah, and I don't think that would be I think that's much more reasonable than the 1.729 that is being applied to get to the 27 million. That's shown on 14 there when she puts them together.
Yeah, I'll look at it again. Thanks.
Thank you.
That's my questions.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Neufeld, I have a question. First of all, with some of the calculations as they appear on your page 1, the very last entry, as full less parking, you've got 3,662,354. That's the gross income or potential gross income?
Yes, and that includes the recovery revenue. And then that has the vacancy taken off of it.
Yeah, and that's all all, as this heading says, less parking, right?
Yeah, because we took out, like I said, that parking that was in the statement includes 2 other roles. So I took out the parking to get the building only, and then I added back in the city's calculation for parking as we don't dispute it, and for the value, for the rental value.
Okay, and then the parking that's added back in above at $106,122.
Correct.
Okay, the expenses as noted at $2,036,501. Those are the expenses as they appear on the income statement?
Directly from that statement, yeah, at page 5, total operating expense.
Okay, so that total operating expense, from that total operating expense, you then add in addition a structural reserve.
Yes, as there isn't one in it. Structural reserve is sort of an appraisal concept of keeping money in the bank essentially to deal with major renovation projects.
Right, and the non-recoverables you've deducted as well. Right.
Correct. Yeah, and that's it. And we feel that it's an integral part of evaluation. You can't operate a building like this without paying the people at our office to keep it up for them.
And what percentage have you used for these non-recoverables? I could probably do
It works out to, it's showing the workout as 12. We used actuals. It was the same minus the land lease. 5 would be acceptable. And that's the problem we found with the city omitting the 5%. The 5% is because it's so it fluctuates there up and down. Sometimes it's 12, it's high. but the 5% would be a standardized rate that would be very comfortable with. This is an expensive year. They had
Right.
a lot of issues, so we
Okay.
applied it at actual. The municipal board did it as an actual too in one case. I don't think either of us have relied upon it for to get to our evaluations because some of those orders aren't overly helpful. But we still feel that if you added the 5%, change that 207 to 5% of the subtotal, that would be very reasonable.
Right. Okay. Because that is 12% or that close to it anyway. The other question I have, and you mentioned this, the TI Contra rent of $484,000.
Mhm.
Does that contra rent also include businesses who may be leasing property and providing services, like Colliers, for example?
Yes, that's part of it. I mean, we have our contract where we have services that were guaranteed for 10 years when we moved into the building. But the bulk of it is a repayment of costs that were given to people moving in, and a large portion of it is us. They paid for all of our desks. They paid for all of our computer setup, not the computer software hardware, but the arms that are holding on it. Like I said, with these cabinets, and we were on an empty floor, and they paid for everything to get us move-in ready. It was a turnkey operation, which also included a contract with them,
Right.
which is a little unusual. So, but that's yeah.
Okay, thank you. I don't think I have anything further. My questions with respect to cap rates have been added or have been answered rather. Just confirming the square footage of the CMM is 7,598 square feet. Is that right?
Yes, I believe that was what was submitted by Mr. Mercury, and I think the city got that right there. So yes.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything further now. Ms. Schabel, you indicated that you had some rebuttal evidence.
Rebuttal was part of tenants' rules.
Oh, it's
Just
been
enlarged.
Okay, so we've already dealt with that?
Yes,
Okay, thank you then. Ms. Schabel, have you had any summary for this
yes,
property?
please. Our job here today is to analyze the market evidence to determine the best conclusion of the market value. The subject property rent showed if you divide the gross potential rent for full leasable area, 2.3 million rent for divide by 146,977 square feet, with that rent existing average in subject property $15.92. For our assessment, generate $15.54 and $14.87. So model generated rent very close to actual rent in the building. Edge showed potential rent without vacancy. But if you divide net income for 1.6 million to generated rent 3 million, it shows that 30% it's vacancy applied by agent. On parking income for income of 106,122 for structure and parking, it's not income, it's net operating for parking and structure in parking lot. It's not income, it's net operating per store per month altogether. Estimated net operating income only 1.4 million, but that subject income statement showed 1.6 million. It's much lower than subject property. That by applying very low rent, 30% vacancy, capitalization rate 7.75%. Own evidence showed 6.5 to 7.5 for Colliers. Supply 6.4%. It's very close to Colliers number. So based off our evidence for rent around $15 per square foot, vacancy 12%, not operating expenses 3%. We don't apply management expenses because it's supported by income expense mail provided for us. It is management expenses very fully covered net leases. That's why we apply only 3%, not recoverables. And our capitalization rate 6.4%. We have estimation of subject property 27,079,000. It's very well supported. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, your summary, please.
I think we saw, starting off with that 2.339 base rent potential, and she's calculating that at 1980. And that's, of course, as I mentioned, that's based off of taking out the vacant space. And we're using a gross potential rent. This is the top amount of rent this building can make according to the statements, and she's calculating it with only the occupied space. Then we also see how the operating costs were about 2 million, whereas recovery was 1.7. And to me, when I see that, that makes me put a lot of doubt in how the actual model is created. Or are they doing that the same way when they calculate their model values? They've got two very clear errors that are showing in there. She had indicated that these are net leases, and we know you can look at those expenses right there. 2 million versus 1.7. They're not all net leases. Are they being put in the model as net leases? And again, she also said the NOI is 1.6 million. We know that includes parking of 2 different roles. There's no dispute there. The parking is different by $400,000 because it's clear that there's more, about 300 when you take out the expenses, but it's clear that there's more there. Is the model ignoring that? When this building went into the model, did they ignore that, or did they figure that out if it's still being presented this way at a hearing? Or did the model miss that too? And then, of course, we got the cap rates. We had indicated that those were submitted in error, and they're relying upon our mistakenly submitted statement. On top of that, their data, which no one's seen, we just have to take their word for it, shows 7 to 7, but they're using 6.4. Our data, I brought you up 2 examples, one at 9% and 12%. Our building that we're talking about is better, but what we're showing in our studies is that 7.5 to 8.5, and that's 7.75 is right in that range. And then, of course, too, we have, they call it a bear market for office right now. They had a lot of external factors, including the former government closing a lot of leases down, not renewing government leases, as well as a major building going into the market at True North. Both of these factors happened, and there weren't people to replace them. Vacancy is the highest it's been. Like, you can go through the Johnson study since 2011. It's the highest I've seen it ever, and this building is no exception. These 3 factors, I think we did a very good job showing how this building is not nearly worth as much as the city's projecting. And then, of course, too, this was decided once, and the city decided to raise it. Forgetting why, that's $3 million. It's going up because we applied for an exemption. It doesn't really sit right. I think we're here to re-argue it, and we are re-arguing it based on the numbers that are here. There were some mistakes in the last submission, and I think they've been corrected. And I think that our income that is provided is a very strong indicator of what this building is actually worth. And for that reason, I suggest that my 19 million be considered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Having heard the evidence, then we will conclude this matter, and that will conclude all matters on the docket today. This hearing can be adjourned. Mr. Mercury, Mr. Neufeld, Ms. Schabel, thank you very much for your presentations today.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank you
rest.
very much.
Have a good rest of the day.
Yes, you too.
Bye.